Good morning. Welcome to another Tiger Game Day with PowerMizzou.com. I'm Gabe DeArmond, going to be here with you for the next, who knows, at least 5 hours, maybe 7 or 8 hours. We'll see how the day goes, see how long everybody wants to talk about it, what kind of a mood you're in. After this game, Missouri and Arkansas kickoff in an hour and 45 minutes at Faurot Field. Mitchell Forty is making his way over to the stadium here in a little bit. I am anchoring from the home office, and we'll talk to Mitch at the end of this show. We'll watch it along with you, and then we'll have the post-game show as we do every Saturday. You guys are getting used to this a little bit now. We got a few people watching. We already got comments and likes building up. So appreciate that. Before we get into it, want to thank Burger Smokehouse for being the sponsor of this show. The Burger Smokehouse at-home tailgate, aptly named, I felt like. They are locally owned and operated by the third and fourth generations of the Burger family in California, Missouri. They have dry-cured, country-cured meats. Look, Christmas is coming up. Get yourself a turkey. Get yourself a spiral smoked ham from Burger Smokehouse. They use a natural smoke process. Only smoke their meat over real wood chips. No liquid smoke, so you can taste all of the natural flavors. You can get those products online at smokehouse.com. You can go to Deerberg's, Schnucks, Price Chopper, Woods, C&R, Hy-Vee, Gerb's, Walmart, Hen House, anywhere you want. Bacon, ham, sausage. They got snack sticks. They've got anything you guys want for game day. And game days, look, we're finally to the point where game days kind of seem like a regular thing again. This is at least 2 weeks in a row, maybe even 3 weeks in a row. But yeah, 3 weeks in a row Missouri has played football. There are 2 more remaining in the regular season. There should be a bowl game at the end of this. We are 75-80% of the way through the regular season, and the SEC has actually gotten most of this thing in. So kudos to the SEC for doing that. We're going to scroll the schedule for this week across the bottom of your screen here shortly. We've got some Missouri-Arkansas info down there for you too, so keep an eye on all that. The schedule off to my left, I guess it's my right as you're looking at this maybe, I'm not sure, but it's a little bit inaccurate at this point because things have been moved around so much. The news of this week, Arkansas this morning, Georgia next week at Faurot Field. No kickoff time has been announced. We think that's going to be a morning game because Missouri is hosting Illinois in the bragging rights game at 7 o'clock that night. And one of the things that a lot of you guys may not think about on a game day, there's a lot of people that work both events. They need time to finish up their duties at football, get over to basketball. So having that Georgia game at 11 a.m. would actually help out a lot of people on campus with basketball at 7 p.m. Then Mississippi State will be the regular season finale on December 19th. That is, assuming everything can get in. There has been a postponement in the SEC today. Georgia and Vanderbilt not being played. I'm not sure Vanderbilt's going to play again. They don't have very many players. A lot of rumors going around that some of their players have decided not to finish the season. That's a whole other issue that I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time on this show because Vanderbilt's 0-8. They were going to be 0-10, and, that's the way it goes. So welcome into Davin and Mitchell and Justin and everybody else that's watching us. Again, if you've got comments or questions, make sure to get them in. We will get to them. During this show, we're going to talk to Andrew Hutchinson. He covers Arkansas for hogbeat.com. That's the rival site. Andrew will actually be at Faurot Field covering the game today. We're going to check in with Mitchell Forty at the end. We're going to play Ryan Walters' interview from earlier this week about facing his old boss and the Missouri defense and all that. Plenty of things to get to. And mention Ryan Walters' old boss. I don't know if you guys have heard this quite yet, but Barry Odom is going to be at Faurot Field today. A year ago today, I bet I could have gotten pretty good odds if I would have bet you that Barry Odom would spend more days in the Faurot Field press box than I would this season. But this is 2020. That's how it goes. It was November 30th last year, I believe, when Odom got fired. I think that Arkansas game was on November 29th. The next morning, the news came out that Barry Odom was gone. Actually came out on Power Mizzou. And then, 8 days later, Missouri hired Eli Drinkwitz. Look, Missouri's in a better place now. I don't think there's any question. Eli Drinkwitz has done absolutely everything that you would have wanted him to do. He is coming off landing a 2022 four-star commitment out of St. Louis University High in Isaac Thompson yesterday. If you guys don't know about that, we have a story and a video interview on the front page of our site. We actually carried Isaac's commitment ceremony live, so you can watch that. But Drinkwitz in year one is over 500, looking to clinch a 500 season this year. Has Missouri's highest-rated recruiting class in the Rivals era for 2021. Off to a hot start in 2022. Everything's good, man. Nobody should really at this point hold this, deep-seated hatred's too strong of a word, but dislike or anything for Barry Odom. He's moved on. It didn't work here. But guess what, guys? He didn't leave trash behind either. Most coaches, and I was a little bit wrong in this because at the beginning of the season, I didn't think there was very much talent on this roster. That's been proven wrong. Now, there's not SEC title talent on this roster, but there is enough talent for Eli Drinkwitz to come in and put together the year he's put together. Again, he deserves credit for that. That's not crediting Barry Odom for this season. Drinkwitz has done more with this talent than Barry Odom did or than Barry Odom probably would have. My only point is most coaches who take over somewhere where the last guy got fired, they're walking into a bad situation. Drinkwitz walked into not a great situation by any means, but it wasn't terrible. I said on our midweek show this week, the 573 Report, we air that every Wednesday night. I said on that show that Eli Drinkwitz took over the best situation any new Missouri coach has taken over in 40 years. And I don't even think it's debatable. If you just go back through it, I can't remember the exact year, but late 70s, early 80s, whenever it was, Warren Powers took over for Al Onofrio. Took over a pretty decent situation. You could argue Woody Woodenhofer took over a better situation than Eli Drinkwitz. I mean, Missouri was coming off a recent bowl game, and they had been a decent program. So maybe I'll listen to Woody, and I think it was 1984. We all know what Woody's era did to this program. When Bob Stoll took over, I think it was in the 89, might have been 88, I don't know. Either year, Missouri was not in good shape. When Larry Smith took over in 1994, which was my freshman year in college at Missouri, this program was not in good shape. When Gary Pinkel took over in 2000, this program was not in good shape. It had been in good shape in 97, 98. It quickly had gone downhill in Larry's last year, and Larry, checked out a little bit in that last year, and that left Pinkel in a tougher spot than he needed to be in. Now, I don't think it was, it wasn't what Larry Smith took over. The program Larry left was the better than the one he took over, but it wasn't good. And then when Barry Odom took over, again, Pinkel's last year had slipped. I mean, there's no question. Recruiting in his last 3 years really had slipped. But beyond that, it was all the off-the-field stuff, all the protests, all the November 2015. This job was, I've said it 100 times, the thing that made the job hardest was the reason Barry Odom got the job, right? So, tough situation. Eli Drinkwitz took over a team that, we forget, was bowl eligible last year. It wasn't great, don't get me wrong, but it was not a terrible situation. There are some guys. I mean, you walk in with Nick Bolton on this team, right? You walk in with Larry Roundtree and Tyler Beatty on this team. With Josh Bledsoe and Tyree Gillespie, a lot of these guys are going to be celebrated today for Senior Day. We can talk about that in a little bit. You get Trajan Jeffcoat back. So, there are some pieces. My only point is I think I know we won't because it's the internet, but it's time to move past, this despisal of Barry Odom. And look, you got a guy that you should be really excited about. I mean, the curators are meeting, I think it's tomorrow. Dave Matter wrote a story yesterday. The curators are meeting about an indoor football facility. I think that's got a fair amount to do with, hey, Eli Drinkwitz is bringing excitement back to this program. When tickets can be sold, they are going to sell almost all of them, because people are excited about Missouri football again. That is all on Eli Drinkwitz. None of this is an argument that Barry Odom should have stayed or anything. But Drinkwitz took over an okay situation and has made it better than that. I think today he's got a chance to take a big step toward winning SEC Coach of the Year in year one. I don't know if he'll get it. Jimbo Fisher will get consideration. I think down at Florida, Dan Mullen's going to get some consideration. If Arkansas wins this game, I think Sam Pittman could get some consideration. But if Eli Drinkwitz wins this game, I think he should beat Mississippi State. I won't rule him out beating Georgia. 7-3, he's going to win SEC Coach of the Year. 6-4, I think he's got a pretty good shot, even though he won't have necessarily beaten a good team. But this Missouri team wasn't picked to win more than 4 games by anybody. They go 6-4. He's got an excellent shot, and he can obviously take a big step toward that today. So, look, I know some people are tired of the Barry Odom talk and all that, but the truth is it is a major storyline. There are other ones. Michael Shearer, Sam Carter on the coaching staff, Brad Davis on the coaching staff down in Fayetteville. Eli Drinkwitz is an Arkansas native, grew up rooting for Arkansas. There was some level of interest from Arkansas before Eli took the Missouri job last December. There are tons of storylines here, a lot of good stuff, just kind of outside of the white lines that make this an intriguing matchup. One of those things is the relationship between Barry Odom and Ryan Walters. Mitchell Forty wrote a really good story on our site yesterday morning. I hope you guys, if you haven't read it, check it out before the game. But on the relationship between Walters and Odom, for those of you who don't know, basically they both worked for Justin Fuente at Memphis. In 2000, before the 2015 season, I guess it was, Gary Pinkel asked Barry Odom to come back to be the defensive coordinator to replace Dave Steckel, who was becoming the head coach at Missouri State. Odom said yes, that was a no-brainer. He was definitely going to take that job. Justin Fuente begged Odom not to take Ryan Walters with him. Odom took Ryan Walters with him, and so they worked together. The first couple of years, Odom had I think a very heavy hand in the defense. The last couple of years, he was still involved, but it was becoming Ryan Walters' defense. So earlier this week, we talked to the Missouri defensive coordinator about his team and also about the guy running the other defense now.
Hey, Ryan, you coach long enough, you're going to go against guys you've worked with in the past, but is this week kind of weird for you, or how you kind of process coaching against Barry?
No, I mean, something I've been asked that a lot just by other people. It's not weird. I think partly because, if he was like the offense coordinator, I think it'd be a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But, I think Coach Drinks put it best earlier in the week. It's a player's game. They're the ones out there playing. So, I'm trying to get focused on what Arkansas does offensively to try to put us in the best position possible to have success on Saturday.
Mitch 40, Power Mizzou, go ahead.
Ryan, I know a lot of coaches say, you take a little bit from everyone you work with to kind of form your own scheme and identity. How much of this current defense do you feel like is kind of attributable to stuff you learned from Coach Odom?
We've kind of evolved, over the years. I think there's some semblances of what he did at Memphis. Not a whole lot of what we did, when he first got back to Missouri, and then obviously last year, kind of evolved to where we are now. So I think there's definitely things I've learned from him and taken away from him. He's obviously does a great job as a coordinator and as a great coach. And I've definitely learned a lot from him just about how to see the game, how to study the game. Then I think we have similar aggressive styles. But as far as like the schematic similarities right now, I don't think there's as many as people would probably perceive or think there would be on the outside. I just think if you look at the structure of how we are and the way we play, and then look at sort of what Arkansas is doing, it is definitely a lot different.
Gabe DeArmond, also Power Mizzou, go ahead.
Yeah, Ryan, do you and Barry, keep in regular touch, and does that change this week at all?
I haven't talked to him this week, if that's what you're asking. You get busy with the season. obviously I worked with Barry for quite some time there, and naturally I've got a great deal of respect for him and his family, and very appreciative of what he's done for me in my career. I don't take that for granted at all. He gave me my first opportunity to coach in the SEC as a safeties coach, coming back on the Pregame staff. And then he gave me an opportunity to call plays, man. I'll never forget that, and I'll always be appreciative of that. So, we have stayed in touch. But like I said, once the season starts, man, it's your time is pretty limited, and so it's hard to have like in-depth conversations. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I have not talked to him this week, and don't plan on talking to him till maybe pregame or after the game.
Colin O'Brien, Jeff City News Tribune, go ahead.
Hey, Coach Walters, you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but Coach Drink was telling us earlier this week that the defense Arkansas is running this year is a little bit more like what you guys did at Memphis than it is what you did here in Missouri. I'm just curious, what do you remember from the year, I guess, you were at Memphis and the defense you ran there, and then what kind of looks you've been trying to give the offense this week in practice to emulate what Arkansas's defense does?
Well, I'm not doing anything in terms of emulating what Arkansas is doing. The offensive staff puts it together, the scout team defense. And I haven't watched Arkansas on defense at all this year. So, I don't know exactly what they're doing, but, at Memphis, it was a fun defense to be a part of. It was a traditional 3-4, balanced, split safety, single high, a lot of drop eight, bringing pressure. And I've heard that's what he's doing. And obviously he's doing a great job. I mean, they are playing really well on that side of the ball, forcing a bunch of turnovers. And I'm not surprised, man. Like I said, he's a great coach, and he's a huge asset for Coach Pittman in Arkansas. So I'm not shocked at all. I expected him to do damage there for sure.
Jack Sobel from the Maneater, go ahead.
Coach Walters, I know you've talked about Nick Bolton a lot, but what specifically stands out to you about him from a football IQ standpoint, from that angle specifically?
Just straight from a football IQ standpoint, he sees the game very well, and he can take what you do in meetings and walkthroughs and apply it to 11-on-11 and in-game situations like immediately. He doesn't need to mess up to learn. He's a great communicator. He can feel tendencies. You know what I mean? Like if a guard is light in his stance, he understands that probably means he's going to pull. If a back is split out a little bit farther than he usually is, he's probably split out to get out. So I just think him playing ball for so long and being in this system and seeing different scenarios, he has great memory, obviously, because he learns and doesn't make the same mistake twice.
If I could ask a quick follow-up. How has that evolved over the years you've coached him? How has his football IQ kind of improved over those years?
Well, you see those mistakes being limited, and his confidence go up. Like I think early in his career, sometimes he would second guess what he was reading, so he wouldn't get there as quickly. So, where freshman, sophomore year, maybe a 2-yard gain. Well, this year is a TFL just because he is confident with his reads and his preparation and, not hesitant to pull the trigger.
Mitch 40, Power Mizzou.
Ryan, I know, as we mentioned earlier, you and Coach Odom first coached on the same staff at Memphis, and then I understand you had the chance to stay at Memphis when he ended up going to Missouri. What made you choose to follow him to Mizzou?
I wanted to coach in the SEC, be a part of this conference, man. This is big time ball. I had a lot of respect for Gary Pinkel. Playing against him at Colorado, I wanted to learn from him. As the Missouri had just come off of the SEC East championship, and I heard a lot of good things about Columbia, and so I thought it was a great opportunity. And the pay was more.
Dave Matter, St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Go ahead.
Ryan, you've prepared for Felipe Franks probably when he was at Florida a couple years ago. How is he different or better now in a different system?
He doesn't turn the ball over as much as he did at Florida. I think they are catering more toward his skill set. He's a big athlete who's got a really strong arm. They make their money on explosive plays. And he extends drives with his legs, and you could tell he's more mature. You know what I mean? I thought at Florida there was some immaturity at times, and he's grown, man. He looks like a grown man on tape. Throws a really good ball, it's no secret why they're having the success they're having offensively. He can get the ball out to his playmakers, and they go make plays for him for sure. And he operates that system really well. Like I said, I think it caters toward his skill set, and it accentuates the things that he's good at. And so he's doing a great job.
Gabe Dearman, go ahead.
Yeah, Ryan, I know this is going back a couple weeks, but what did you learn about yourself having to watch a football game on TV as opposed to being there?
Man, I learned that I'm nowhere near ready to not coach. You know what I'm saying? I love this game. I love being a part of it. And I'm also a fan. Like I love football. I'm a big football fan. I was a little more poised than I thought I was going to be, and I think that's credit to Coach Gibbs calling a great game and us having some success defensively. I think my wife learned more about me than I learned about myself that day. Just kind of seeing my reaction sometimes.
All right, then what did your wife learn about you that day?
She probably, her and my kids probably think I'm crazy. I'm pretty laid back and even keel off the field, and obviously when I get on the field, it's a lot different. So they got to see Coach Walters and not Dad.
Peter Ball from The Athletic. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, Ryan, with Nick Bolton walking on senior day, I was kind of curious, what was the moment where you first kind of realized, I guess, how special a player you had in him?
The Alabama game his freshman year when Terez Hall got the targeting and he had to go in there. We were not rotating him in a lot at that point of the year just because Terez was such a good player and playing the style of play he was playing. So when Nick had to go in there, he was not shook at all and played really well. I mean, he played just as good, if not better, than Terez was playing. And then there was another moment in the bowl game against Oklahoma State where Terez was tired, had to come out. It was a critical moment right before the end of the game, and we were trying to get a stop to give our offense a chance to try to go score to win it. And he made a big time play, and I think it was assisted a sack with Terry Beckner. So just those moments were never big for him, even at that age. And then his sophomore year, Kel was playing really, really well. He shoot really well. Kel was playing lights out, that first half of the season. But his, Nick's stats were right there with him. And, he kind of got overshadowed a little bit, but, Kel will be the first to tell you. He's like, man, Nick is probably better than I am. And, you look up and the things that he's doing right now, I don't think I'll ever see the stat line that Kel had those first 4.5 games. But, Nick is special, man. And so, yeah, I'm not at all shocked that he's having the ability to enter the draft as, after his junior season. In fact, if he were talking about staying, I'd probably tell him he's crazy. So that's hats off to him and the work that he's put in. He's been a consummate professional since he's walked in here. Can't speak enough about his character and his work ethic and the way he's conducting himself. What you guys don't see is what he does in the classroom. He's just, he's a pro, and he's a superstar. And if you are that on the field, the chances are more than likely that you're that off the field. And just what you guys see on game days is the culmination of what he does, as a person throughout the week.
Jack Sobel from the Man Eater.
Kind of similar question to what Peter asked. What are some moments from this season where Nick's made a play and you've kind of went like, wow, he's really become a great player?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even say wow anymore because it's so common. There'll be times where we'll see a different run play than we saw throughout the week, or a variation of something, and he'll just beat the block and go make the play. And we might have been outnumbered if they'd have fitted up, just if the offense would have fitted up just right. But he just goes and makes the play. So he can get us out of bad situations really easily. I think what I've been most impressed with from him this season that you didn't see a year ago is what he communicates in between series. He can tell you exactly, if there was a play within that series where we didn't fit it up right, or they got a chunk yardage play. He can tell you exactly what happened. What gap it hit in, why it hit there. Somebody got out of gap, who it was. What the blocking scheme was. So he's not out there just reacting or going off of instincts. He's really dissecting what's going on from a schematic standpoint, and that's huge as a coordinator to be able to know exactly what was transpiring the series before, so that you can make corrections on the sideline and continue to improve throughout the game. So he definitely allows us to do that.
Suichi Terada, Kansas City Star, go ahead.
Hey Ryan, just wondering how different is your defense when you have healthy bodies, especially along that D line, but elsewhere, especially in your depth and everything.
Yeah, I mean, when you're healthy, you're at your best. You know what I mean? We were so thin at the defensive line position a couple of weeks ago. You just become thin. Guys get tired and they're looking, and there's no backups. You know what I mean? So obviously, if you're running on 50% of your energy level, it's not going to be as good as if you're full go. So just getting everybody back. It also creates more competition during practice, and better. We're able to go at a faster tempo in practice when we're at full strength. And just the morale is also better when you're at full strength, and so everybody's involved. And so it definitely was beneficial to get those guys back last week.
And we'll finish up with Coach Walters with Colin O'Brien. Go ahead, Colin.
Coach, I know there's some guys that haven't made their minds up fully yet one way or the other, but just the group of seniors that's walking before this game Saturday, just what did their buy-in mean to this team this season, those defensive players, especially considering all the craziness that's happened just with COVID?
Yeah, I mean, this is a special group. They've been through a ton, throughout the years. Every year in college ball, at least that I've experienced, this, I've seen it all. And then the next year happens, and so there's a new challenge, right? And so I think this group's just their resiliency and their ability to adapt has been huge, and there has been complete buy-in from the group that's walking, and they have done everything that we've asked them to do and more. They really genuinely care about each other and this program. And I'm proud to be their coach, and I'm proud to have worked alongside them and had to, and doing the same with them, going through adversity with them and adapting with them. It has not ever felt like it's us and them. It's a together deal. And I think the term family kind of gets thrown around loosely, especially in terms of football. But these are relationships that we'll maintain for a lifetime, and I think that should be the definition of family. And so that doesn't get taken lightly. I'll be sad to see him go. This group is special to me personally, and so they will definitely hold a special place in sort of my life and my soul.
All right, so long interview there with defensive coordinator Ryan Walters, but look, I think and this isn't why he might be a head coach in the next year, but it's kind of related. He's really become a guy that he's thoughtful. He gives good answers. He gives you guys good information there on Nick Bolton, on the senior class, on Arkansas, on his relationship with Barry. I thought that was all worth listening to. So that's why we let it go for the full 17 minutes. So I hope that you guys enjoyed kind of hearing that. Now, Walter's job on the field today, slow down an Arkansas offense that's much better than it has been, maybe not great. Two things that will impact that this week. Rakeem Boyd, who was one of the SEC's leading rushers last year and was Arkansas's leading rusher this year, opted out of the season. I believe that happened on Tuesday afternoon, but he's not playing Arkansas's last 2 games. So, now look, they've got a guy named Traylon Smith back there who is very good. He's fast. He's a good running back. So I don't know how big an impact Boyd is on this game, but when you take a good player off the field, it gets a little bit easier to stop the team. The main thing is going to be Felipe Franks here, right? And Bradley brought this point up very early, but I wanted to save it till we talked about Franks. There is some talk this morning. I checked in with our people that cover Arkansas. Felipe Franks has some sort of a rib injury. I don't know the severity. He was limited in practice this week, according to the people that I know that cover Arkansas. He is going to play today. Now, whether his mobility will be impacted, his ability to throw will be impacted, whether he'll wear like some sort of a flak jacket or something protective over his ribs, I'm not sure about any of that. All I know is something's wrong with his ribs, whether it's broken, bruised, who knows. He was very limited in practice all week, but he is expected to play for Arkansas today. Now, Felipe Franks is really interesting, and I want to put up another comment that I'd put up earlier in the show. I think it's from Justin, and he says, one storyline people don't know is the Mizzou versus Florida game 2 years ago when there was a lot of doubts about Felipe Franks that happened in Gainesville. So I was at that game, right? Felipe Franks was as bad as I've seen an SEC quarterback on that day, maybe. I mean, Missouri played well, but part of the reason Missouri was ahead by so much is that Franks was missing, like, open guys. Missouri's coverage wasn't great that day. I didn't think Missouri's defense was great that day. Felipe Franks was throwing the ball 6 feet over guys' heads that were running open across the middle of the field. He got hurt. Kyle Trask went in. And almost immediately, everybody kind of said, wait, I think Florida's better with Kyle Trask in the game than with Felipe Franks. That's obviously proven to be true. So because we saw him at his worst, we have this idea of what Felipe Franks is. And it's hard for us to change our minds and let go of things. And I put myself fully in this category because I can't quite wrap my head around the fact that Felipe Franks is actually a good SEC quarterback. But if you look at the numbers, Felipe Franks is a good SEC quarterback. I don't have him in front of me. I'm going to look him up right now. But the truth is that Felipe Franks is having a better season than Connor Bazelak is. I mean, he just is. In the SEC, you've got Mac Jones and Kyle Trask. Those guys are 1-2 in some order in the SEC. Number 3 is Matt Corral, who's playing in Lane Kiffin's offense and winging the ball absolutely all over the field. In 2020, Felipe Franks has completed 69% of his passes for 2,017 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions through 8 games against SEC competition. Again, 2017 yardage, 17 touchdowns, 4 picks, 69.1% completion rate. Now I'm going to read you Connor Bazelak's stats from this year. Connor Bazelak in 7 games is completing 70.3% of his passes, so slightly more, 1,622 yards, which figures out to 240-ish a game. It's about 260 less than Franks has in one more game. So the yardage is close, but Franks has more. The biggest difference is touchdowns. Franks has 17, Bazelak has 5. Interceptions, Franks has 4, Bazelak has 2. So they're pretty similar seasons. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying far and away Franks is better, but Franks has been better this year. He's thrown more touchdowns. He's thrown for a little bit more yardage. Hasn't really thrown more interceptions. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around that Felipe Franks is probably the fourth best quarterback in the SEC, but it's true. He's a huge difference in what Arkansas is doing this year. The other huge difference, obviously, their defense. They're taking the ball away. Last year, Arkansas had the worst defense pretty much in Power 5 football. I think they gave up almost 37 points a game. And remember, that's while you're playing for theoretically not very good non-conference teams. This year, that's down about 7 points a game. They're giving up like 6.5 fewer points per game than they did last year. The big reason is they lead the country in interceptions. In games Arkansas has won the turnover battle, it is 3-0. In games Arkansas has not won the turnover battle, has been even or worse, is 0-5. So there's your number. And Cody says, I would hope a fifth-year senior is better than a redshirt freshman. Thing is, he's not a huge upgrade. Cody, yes, Felipe Franks should be better than Connor Bazelak, and that wasn't meant to be an insult to Connor Bazelak, but I think following Missouri, we look at it and we say, geez, Bazelak's having a great year, right? I think everybody thinks that. And so if you think that, you also have to look at Franks and say, you know what? He's actually having a really good year too. And I've been as slow to admit that as anybody. I just never thought Felipe Franks was a winning SEC quarterback. And I understand they're 3-5, but considering where they've been, that's pretty, that's winning. But again, back to what I was talking about, Arkansas wins the turnover battle. It's 3-0. Even or loses the turnover battle, it's 0-5. Reminds you a lot of the Kentucky game. We said the same things going into that game. Missouri ran the ball, simply made sure it did not give Kentucky the football and won the game. I think you could see a similar recipe and approach today. Just don't give Arkansas the ball. Don't give them short fields. Don't give them pick sixes. Don't give them easy chances. You've got a really good shot at your fifth straight win over Arkansas. There is no one. I don't want to say there's no one. Fifth-year seniors on Arkansas's roster have beaten Missouri before. Felipe Franks has beaten Missouri before. But if Missouri wins this game, there is not a single player who probably comes back to Arkansas next year who has beaten Missouri in an Arkansas uniform. That would be 5 in a row, which gets to kind of what I wanted to talk about next. The most common question I've gotten this week is this a rivalry? First of all, we talk about this every year, right? This is like 8 straight years of talking about this, and I'm kind of not sure why it matters. A part of me says, who cares if it's a rivalry? But also, the fabric of college sports is rivalries, right? I've written before, literally like Jayhawkers came on distant, long ago, farm of distant, long ago relatives of mine, like back in Frank and Jesse James' time. There is history between Missouri and Kansas that isn't about football or basketball. It's about bloodshed and war. And that made those games a bigger deal, right? Missouri and Nebraska, it wasn't a rivalry most of the time I was growing up because Missouri never won. Nebraska won 25 in a row. But then sometime around 2005, it kind of turned into a rivalry a little bit because all of a sudden Missouri was winning those games and Nebraska fans were pissed off about it and started to hate them. I said, that's when it's a rivalry. When they start to hate you, it means you're a threat to them. And that turned into more of Missouri's rivalry the last 10 years or so in the Big 12. Since Missouri's come to the SEC, South Carolina really has been the best rivalry. The best matchup. I mean, there have been exciting games. There have been weird games. There was Don Staley suing Jim Sturk. There was, the whole Sophie Cunningham deal. When you take into account all sports, that's probably been, even just football, that's been Missouri's best, kind of, I don't want to call it a rivalry. Like, you don't hate each other maybe, but it's been Missouri's most intriguing kind of partnership. The SEC wants Missouri and Arkansas to be the rivalry, right? I mean, there's this trophy with an insurance company's name on it, and Eric Beisel made some weird comments a few years ago and all that. It's not a rivalry yet. Arkansas fans will insist it's never going to be a rivalry because Arkansas wants to live in this world where LSU is its rival. I mean, come on, man. LSU is – if LSU lists off its top rivalries, like Arkansas's not in the top 3. It just isn't. That's like – that would be like Missouri saying Oklahoma was its rival. No, it wasn't, because A, you never beat them, and B, like, they have other games they care much more about. Oklahoma was never your rival, Missouri. Not since like maybe 1966. So Arkansas has more maybe quote unquote natural rivalries in this league than Missouri does because they've been in it 20 years longer. But they're both kind of in search of one. But this hasn't become one yet. A few things need to happen for it to become one. First, Arkansas has to win some. I mean, they just do. Missouri keeps winning this thing every year. It doesn't really, it's not a rivalry. Second, the games have to mean something. And by mean something, not, hey, is Missouri going to finish third in the division or is Arkansas going to get to 4-6? I mean, like, at least one of these teams has to be playing for something. That was true when they played in 2014, but it hasn't been true since then. Neither of these teams has been playing for anything in the last 5 years. So that's the second step. And the third step is, like, we need those internal crossover things that make this a big deal. I mean, I've brought this up every single day this week on an interview or on our show or on our site or whatever. But the moment Missouri-Arkansas basketball became fun was the moment when Mike Anderson and Frank Haith almost fought at midcourt at Mizzou Arena. And when I say almost fought, like, that's not an exaggeration. So if you don't remember, it was Frank's first year at Missouri after Mike had gone to Arkansas, and it was at the peak of Missouri fans not wanting to give Mike Anderson credit for what he did here, and they hate him and called him suitcase and all that. So Missouri gets out to this blazing start against Arkansas at Mizzou Arena. Phil Pressey drills a 3. Anderson calls timeout. I don't remember the exact score, but Missouri was up quite a bit. They were playing really well. And, of course, there's this family history. Phil's family and Mike's family have known each other forever, literally like since Phil was born. And Mike says something to Phil as Phil's going back to the bench. What he said, I have no idea, but it was, you know, I assume it was pretty good-natured. I don't think he was, like, taking a shot at him or anything. And so Frank, on the Missouri bench, he's like, you don't talk to my players. And he's just steaming about this and starts charging toward the Arkansas bench. And guys grab Frank and keep him back, and shot of Mike kind of chuckling on the Arkansas bench like, what the hell are you doing, man? It was great. I'm still bummed out they didn't actually come together. And then after the game, they both denied anything happened, but we were there. We saw it. Frank wanted to go at Mike Anderson. So there was intrigue there, right? That was fun. That was a rivalry. So here's what needs to happen today. Barry Odom needs to come out pregame and, like, plant an Arkansas flag in the north end zone. And then his defense needs to go out and just lay it on Missouri's offense. That's what you need for a rival. Now, look, neither of those things is going to happen, right? I mean, Arkansas's defense could play really well. But Barry Odom's not going to come back and, like, plant a flag in the end zone. You know, it's not going to happen. But if we really want this to be a rivalry, we need something like that. We need something like Nick Bolton's mom talking trash about Bumper Pool in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, which happened in an article written by Bennett Durando this morning. So go check that out. That's the kind of thing that makes a rivalry. And that's what we need to see a little more of. And again, there are storylines here with Drinkwitz being an Arkansas native. I don't think Drinkwitz was offered the Arkansas job, but I think there were conversations with Odom and Shearer and Brad Davis and Sam Carter being at Arkansas. There are storylines here that make this interesting, and you build that up over a number of years, then that's when it becomes a rivalry. And Rob brings up that Missouri won that game by 30 where Anderson and Haith almost fought. I truly don't even remember the game. I only remember Anderson and Haith almost fighting. It's my favorite thing that's ever happened at Mizzou Arena. But so back to this one, you know, we're getting there. We're getting some things that are exciting. And let me say this about Barry Odom. Arkansas assistants don't do interviews this year. So nobody's talked to Barry Odom. You know, I know Ben Fredrickson spoke with him briefly a while ago. I've traded a couple messages with him at times over this year. You know, just kind of keep in touch because, as you guys know, I've known Barry since he was, I believe, a year behind me at Missouri. So I've known him for a while. Let me tell you this about Barry Odom. I don't think he has anything against Eli Drinkwitz. I don't think he has anything against any player on Missouri's roster. I can tell you almost certainly if Barry Odom was given truth serum and allowed to do an interview, he's been in football for a minimum of 30 years, probably more. I would be willing to bet Barry Odom has never played in a game or coached in a game that he wants to win more than he wants to win this game today. And it's not about Nick Bolton or Connor Bazelak or any of the players. It's not about Eli Drinkwitz. Might be a little about Jim Sturk. Just might be. Look, it's why it's so hard to come back to your alma mater. Because if it doesn't end well, those feelings change forever. Kim Anderson doesn't love Missouri anymore. I don't think Barry Odom loves Missouri anymore. He loves things about Missouri. He loves what Missouri did for him. I think there are hard feelings. And when Barry Odom was sifting through which jobs to take, whether they were defensive coordinator or head coaching opportunities that he had last offseason, and from what I understand, there were some of both. But when he was sifting through those opportunities, I promise you, part of it in his mind was, where can I go that I can come back and I can make Missouri pay for firing me? Now, I'm not saying he didn't deserve to be fired. I'm not saying any of that. But I promise you it was a factor in the job he took. It's not an accident that of the opportunities he had, he is the defensive coordinator at Missouri's rival. I promise this game means a ton to him. Means a ton to the guys on Missouri side too. It's just a little bit different with Odom coming back. So for other Arkansas things, and we talked about Boyd, we talked about Franks, we talked about some of that stuff, and I think there's going to be a few COVID issues, all that. But for other Arkansas things, I talked earlier this week with Andrew Hutchinson, who covers the Razorbacks for hogbeat.com. That's the Rivals site, so I want to give you guys a chance to listen to that conversation. After that, we'll come back and check in with Mitchell Forty from Faroe Field. All right, Andrew Hutchinson from hogbeat.com is joining us. That is the rival site that covers Arkansas. Andrew, appreciate you doing this. We were going to do it last Thursday, and then all of a sudden, that game wasn't going to happen. I think by the end of the year, Missouri will have 3 games played on the date they were scheduled. So welcome to 2020.
That sounds about right. 2020 has been quite the year. Luckily, it hasn't impacted Arkansas as much. I couldn't imagine having to be thrown around as much as y'all have.
No, we just wait till Wednesday, and we're like, we'll let you guys know if they play, who they play, when they play. We're not going to mess with anything till then. So before we get into kind of this year and all the storylines and matchups and everything, after Arkansas started off, I think it was like 2-2 and was playing pretty well, probably should have been 3-1. I texted somebody I know in college coaching, and I said, explain it to me. Was Chad Morris just this bad? Because I watched Arkansas the last couple of years, and I just came to the conclusion there's no talent there. That's wrong. There's some talent there. It just seems like Chad Morris apparently didn't know what to do with it. Is that unfair?
I think you hit it on the nail on the head. I mean, Chad Morris was just not a good coach. I mean, it never seemed like the team bought in. You saw him just had horrible, roster management, ran guys off. I mean, you saw Ty Story leave after Chad's first year, come back with Western Kentucky and actually beat Chad Morris in Arkansas, and actually resulted in him getting fired finally. So, I mean, it was just a total cluster of a 2-year period. I mean, they had just as many wins as they had losses to the group of 5 schools. I mean, that should not happen at any SEC school, maybe not even Vanderbilt. So he just was not very good.
Yeah. So Arkansas obviously got off to a really hot start, and people were saying that Pittman is the SEC coach of the year for sure, maybe the national coach of the year. Obviously they've lost a couple in a row. They've got Alabama next. If Arkansas is going to pick up another win, you would think it would probably need to be this weekend. Has the second half of the season been things catching up with Arkansas a little bit, just kind of regression to the mean? In other words, are they maybe not as good as they looked the first 4 or 5 weeks, but not quite as tough as it looks right now?
Well, I mean, it helps that 2 of your first 4 games are the 2 Mississippi schools, schools that were a little bit closer to kind of your level. So that helped. And you win both those games. You mentioned, possibly, should have started 3-1 with the Auburn game. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. But the schedule just got a lot harder. I mean, they beat Tennessee. That was a game I thought they had a chance of winning. I thought they had a great chance of beating LSU. They almost did it despite having 56 scholarship players available and hardly any defensive linemen. So really, it's gone about how I expected it to. Whenever Arkansas had its open date after the first 4 weeks when they were sitting at 2-2, I put my prediction out as saying they have a legitimate shot at going 5-5 with wins over Tennessee, LSU, and then Missouri. Obviously, the LSU game didn't happen, but still, you'd think that this Missouri game would be an excellent chance to get to 4 wins. And, it might be, the winner of this game is the coach who wins SEC Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I've said that. I think the winner of this game should have the inside track. Look, Dan Mullen, Jimbo Fisher, these guys are going to get some votes and may end up winning, and neither one of them would be undeserving, but both of them have significantly more talent in their programs than Pittman and Drinkwitz. So kind of a two-part question here. What has Sam Pittman done that has allowed Arkansas to make this move up from what they've been the last 3 years to where they are now? And how big a part of it is Felipe Franks? Because I'll be honest, I was at the game where Felipe Franks got hurt and Kyle Trask came in against Missouri, and pretty much everyone there instantly said, Florida's better now. Like, Felipe he showed some flashes now and then, but he wasn't really, when he was at Florida, a good SEC quarterback. So I guess kind of two parts. How much do each of those guys get credit for what this season is?
Well, I think the biggest thing that Sam Pittman did was, one, he got the players to buy in, which, as I said, that just did not happen under Chad Morris. You had a few players here and there probably bought in and really liked them and everything, but still there was a large chunk of the team that just never did. And I think that Sam Pittman, he's got a reputation as kind of a player's coach, and I think that's helped. So that's the big thing. He also hired an incredible staff. I'm sure we'll talk about Barry Odom. I mean, he was an excellent hire. Kendall Briles, he's still kind of, the fan base is kind of torn on him, but I think he's done a pretty solid job with what he was given, what kind of starting point. But then you also can't talk about it without talking about Felipe. I mean, I think everyone expected him to be at least a decent quarterback. That's all Arkansas really wanted, was just somebody who could be decent and provide stability, after Arkansas used 8 different starting quarterbacks over the last 2 years, including 5 different guys in the last 5 games of 2019. Truly, truly incredible. Just a revolving door, completely ineffective, lower than 50% completion percentage, just totally, totally horrible. And so the thought was, if Felipe could just come in and be decent, he had decent pieces around him. People thought Rakeem Boyd would have a better season than he has, but I mean, he was a great piece. Treylon Burks, really good piece. So they thought, he could just be decent, it would be great. But he has far exceeded those expectations, and has really had one of the better seasons by an Arkansas quarterback in school history, right up there with guys like Ryan Mallett, Tyler Wilson, and Brandon Allen.
All right. So like you said, we're going to get to Odom in a minute, but I want to ask you first, because the other connection here is that Eli Drinkwitz obviously is an Arkansas guy, to the point where you've got some history personally with him. But I wanted to ask, nobody knows this for sure. Eli's not going to say it. Arkansas is not going to say it. What was their interaction or pursuit of him as a potential head coach at Arkansas last year?
I think he was definitely a candidate. I don't know if there was an official, interview or something like that, but I do think there was interest, mutual interest. I mean, you mentioned Eli's an Arkansas guy, grew up in the state from Alma. So I think there was interest there. I don't know what it was that eventually steered them to Sam Pittman. I think the biggest thing that helped Sam Pittman was that there was a really large section of former players who played for Sam Pittman whenever he was the offensive line coach here at Arkansas, that kind of went to bat for him. And I think that's kind of why they figured they could do that. They could get him for cheap. I mean, obviously, I think Coach Drinkwitz would have been cheap as well. But I think Pittman was he was very flexible with kind of how his contract was kind of structured and everything like that. And I think it just financially, considering they were paying a bunch of buyouts already to previous fired coaches, it just kind of made the most sense, from a financial standpoint. It just happened to work out better than I think anybody could have expected.
So the big storyline obviously is, hey, the former head coach is now the Arkansas defensive coordinator. It's really unique. I actually asked Drinkwitz, hey, do you have to change like the way you signal plays in and stuff? And he said, we've talked about that because that's a bigger part of college football than I think a lot of people understand, which was to me a refreshingly honest answer. People don't talk about that stuff at all. But what has Barry done well with this defense? Because when we thought they were playing last week, I actually ran some numbers, and you'll never get a coach to be fully honest. Hey, are turnovers luck or can turnovers be coached? But when Arkansas has won the turnover battle, they are 3-0. And when they haven't, they are 0-5. There's more to the improvement of the defense than that, though. So what's he done so well down there?
I think it all comes back to scheme. The last couple of years with John Chavis as the defensive coordinator, it didn't seem like they had any idea what they were doing. It almost seemed like a bunch of guys running out there with like chickens with their heads cut off or something. It just was not effective. I mean, last year in 2019, Arkansas had the worst statistical defense in school history in terms of yards allowed and points allowed per game. So it didn't look, and there were solid pieces. I mean, that was with, they had a third round draft pick on the defensive line, an undrafted free agent that's made an NFL roster at linebacker, and a seventh round pick that's now a starter in the NFL and at safety. And all those guys are gone, and yet they're somehow better. And I think that really just kind of shows what Barry has done schematically, figured out the best way to make these pieces work. I mean, they've got a walk-on starting at corner, a true freshman 2-star recruit backing him up. You've got a former walk-on starting at middle linebacker. You've got other, former walk-ons, getting significant reps in the 2 deep. So not a lot of what you would say talent on that side of the ball. It's just they know what to do. The turnovers, I've definitely heard all about the debate on whether it's luck or not, but you're right. I mean, they have been critical for Arkansas, and the interceptions specifically, I think they've got 13 right now, and they'd had, I want to say 6 and 5 interceptions the previous 2 years. It seems like they've been taught, and I think Sam Carter, another, former Mizzou staffer on Arkansas staff now, the cornerbacks coach, has really done a good job of coaching the guys up and saying, hey, it's okay to turn around and look for the ball and try to catch it yourself. That is okay. And right. Lo and behold, they've racked up, one of the top interception totals in the country.
So we talked about this being kind of maybe a playing game for SEC Coach of the Year. This game won't determine it, but I think the top 2 candidates for Defensive Player of the Year in this league are in this game, with Grant Morgan at Arkansas, who probably has a little bit of a statistical edge, and then Nick Bolton, who, look, I'll fully admit, I haven't watched all of Arkansas's games. I've watched all of Missouri's games. I have a hard time believing that anybody plays linebacker any better than Nick Bolton does, but I assume Arkansas people would say the same thing about Grant Morgan. So, just obviously they're never going to be on the field together, but intriguing kind of little game within a game there.
Yeah, I think Nick Bolton's probably, not even probably, it's probably undisputed. He is the better NFL prospect. I was texting you earlier and asked, is he considered a first-round draft pick? And yeah, he is. And so Grant Morgan is probably not a NFL draft pick. I don't even know if he's a guy that could make an NFL roster. I think he probably has the potential to, just by sheer will and determination. I mean, he's a former 2-star recruit, had an offer from Air Force and a bunch of D2 schools, came to Arkansas as a walk-on. His older brother, Drew Morgan, fans might remember, was a standout wide receiver for Arkansas, and I think it's 2015 and 2016. He was another, unheralded recruit, didn't really get to play much, and then when he finally got his opportunity, was incredibly productive, and now his name's in the record books at Arkansas. And Grant has done pretty much the same thing, finally getting an opportunity as a 5th-year senior and been just incredibly productive. I actually wrote a feature on him this week on Hogbeat, and kind of diving into, what is it that makes him so effective? Because he's not the biggest, he's not the fastest. I used to say he wasn't the most athletic until I saw a video of him after the Ole Miss win doing a backflip in full pads. So he's obviously got some athleticism.
Right.
But he doesn't look like your prototypical SEC linebacker. And, yet he's leading the country in tackles, which tackles aren't always the best stat, as you probably know. But I mean, he's graded out well on Pro Football Focus. He's broken up a ton of passes. He has a pick 6, bunch of tackles for losses. I mean, he's just always around the ball. And I think it's just kind of, instincts and, just being a smart player.
Couple more for you, and we'll let you run because I know you got a busy day. But look, I've said since Missouri came into this league, you can't invent a rivalry, right? It doesn't become a rivalry just because you say it is, and an insurance company sponsors a big trophy and a backup linebacker makes some inflammatory remarks in 2016 about the other school. So Missouri, Arkansas basketball, that rivalry jumped up a little bit when Mike Anderson took the job. And then it really jumped up when Mike Anderson and Frank Haith almost fought each other at midcourt here a few years ago, which was amazing. And I'm still upset that they didn't actually come together for that. But with Odom there, with Drinkwitz, a guy who, I mean, neither one of them's going to say anything inflammatory about the other place, anything like that. But Barry Odom spent half his life at the University of Missouri. Drinkwitz grew up, talked about remembering Barry Lunny playing quarterback for Arkansas. Is this at least a step toward, hey, maybe if these teams actually get good, which is the most important step, this could become something?
I've said all along that if the two schools and the SEC had not been so adamant about this being a rivalry from the jump, and slapping a corporate sponsor on there and creating a shiny trophy, then we would be in what I think the early stages of a rivalry. I mean, obviously Arkansas needs to win a game or two to make it a true rivalry, but you've got some of the inner workings. I mean, you look back at last year, Jonathan Nance transferring from Arkansas to Missouri, and then kind of helping convince Kelly Bryant to choose Missouri instead of Arkansas. That was huge in terms of creating a rivalry. You mentioned the backup linebacker a few years back saying Arkansas. That'll always get Arkansas fans fired up. You have the connections on the two staffs. You've got Arkansas kids on Missouri's roster. That helps. So those are all key aspects to a rivalry. But Arkansas fans, at least, I don't know how Missouri fans feel about it, but Arkansas fans are so resistant. They're just like, this is not a rivalry. Arkansas is just a way better program than Missouri. We shouldn't even be considered in the same sentence, and yada, yada, yada. And, when really that kind of hatred kind of shows you, hey, maybe there is a little bit of rivalry there.
Right. Yeah. I went through this with Missouri and Nebraska. Like, I grew up and Missouri was not Nebraska's rival because Missouri didn't beat them for 25 years. It became a rivalry when Missouri, I said, here's how you know it's a rivalry. They hate you now. They never used to even think about you, but if they hate you, it might be a rivalry. So look, I don't like to put people on the spot with predictions on something like this, but just a quick, Arkansas wins if they do this. Arkansas loses if this happens. And don't say scores more points.
I think if Arkansas, we kind of touched on it earlier, if Arkansas wins the turnover battle, I think it has an excellent chance of winning, not just, from a defensive standpoint, forcing turnovers, but if Arkansas takes care of the ball and is productive and actually moves the ball, then I think it has an excellent chance of winning. We didn't see that against LSU the last time Arkansas played, had a really hard time, 0 of 10 on third downs in that game. So if they just move the ball a little bit, sustain some drives, they probably win that game. I think that's a huge key. And if they can't convert third downs and they can't stop third downs, which LSU in that game, I want to say was 13 of 24 or something like that, gave up over 50% on third downs. If they can't get off the field defensively, it's going to be a long game for Arkansas. I think it really just boils down to that.
All right. Well, Hutch, appreciate the time, man. And probably the second most interesting game of the day in the SEC on Saturday. So we'll see what happens.
Look forward to it.
All right. That is Andrew Hutchinson from our rival site, hogbeat.com. Andrew does a good job covering the Razorbacks. He puts out a ton of content. You guys, when this show ends, you'll have about 20 minutes before the game starts. If you want to check out some things from the opposing side, the latest updates, I would definitely encourage you to go over there and read some of Andrew's stuff. He does a nice job. We're going to call Mitchell Forty here in about 5 minutes over at the stadium. Before we do, here are Mitchell's updates. You guys were talking about it a little bit while that interview with Andrew was going on. First of all, Jalen Knox dressed out and warming up. Eli Drinkwitz called him questionable earlier this week with a lower leg injury. That happened against Vanderbilt. We can't yet say that Jalen Knox is playing. We don't know that for sure, but we can at least say he's on the field warming up. We'll talk to Mitch about that, in a couple minutes. Also, Mizzou cornerback Adam Sparks has opted out for the rest of the season. The senior was going to be honored for today's Senior Day festivities. He will not now. Look, we've talked about this almost every week. The unintended consequence of free year of eligibility, you can opt out, it's not going to hurt you, is that this is now being done, obviously, for non-COVID reasons a lot of the time. I mean, I don't think Adam Sparks stuck this out for 8 games and 3.5 months and all that, and now suddenly is more worried he's going to get COVID-19 by playing the last 3 games than he was before. I can't say for sure what the issue is. I haven't talked to Adam, but, it kind of makes sense that that's probably not what's going on. Ennis Rakestraw has started every game. Jarvis Ware is the number 1 corner. Rakestraw's number 2. Ish Burdine is clearly number 3. And Jalen Carlise has played the last couple games as number 4. Adam's not playing a ton. So, hey, this could be a byproduct of that. I don't hold it against Adam Sparks. I don't hold it against anybody who's made this decision. Rakeem Boyd made it for Arkansas. It is what it is. It's 2020. Kind of weird. I understand people that don't understand the timing, but that's the way things go this year. Real quick, before we talk to Mitch, I do want to once again mention we've got over 100 people here watching the pregame show. We've only got 13 likes so far. So if you're on here, hey, just hit the like button. I know it sounds stupid. I feel dumb saying it, but it really does help with visibility. It lets more people see what we're doing, brings it to people's attention, helps us out, make a couple bucks here and there on the show. So if you're on here, just hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out, and this is something that has grown a little bit every week. When we started this, I wasn't sure this was going to work at all. This has now become a pretty popular thing on game days that, at least as of now, we plan to continue after even when I can go to games again. I may not. I may keep doing this because Mitchell Forty is doing everything I used to do, covering games in person, and he does probably a better job of it than I've been doing the last few years, and now that frees me up to do this and hang out with you guys in a different way. Appreciate all your participation, and appreciate Burger Smokehouse for sponsoring this show, all of our other sponsors as well, but this one particularly sponsored by Burger Smokehouse, which is located in California, Missouri. You can get their stuff online at smokehouse.com. You can get it at grocery stores all over mid-Missouri. They've got amazing bacon. That to me is the best thing they have. They have snack sticks, which I really like every now and then, just for a quick little snack between meals. They've got ribs, they've got pulled pork, they've got brisket, they've got turkey, they've got hams. Anything you guys want. Highly recommend their products. I haven't had anything yet that I wouldn't try again, wouldn't recommend to anybody else. So we really do try to use sponsors who we use their stuff. Boulevard Beer, Colin Gentry Law Group, Burger Smokehouse, Billiards. These are all places I don't want to be the guy recommending things I won't use. So I recommend those things. So appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate Burgers and all of our sponsors. Again, smokehouse.com for that. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to dial up Mitchell Forty over at the stadium. So you guys may hear a ringtone. I'm not sure. I've got it on mute. Hopefully you won't. But while we are waiting for Mitch from the press box, and hey, we actually have Mitch from the press box. Will we have video of Mitch from the press box? Mitch, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, Gabe, I'm good. Can you hear me?
Hey, we do have video of Mitch from the press box. That is a fantastic mask you're wearing, Mitchell.
That's right.
We certainly enjoy the advertising. So
gotta rep the brand.
Yeah, definitely. So look, we just put up a screenshot of your couple updates. First of all, Jalen Knox. Like, we don't yet know that he's playing. We just know that he's warming up, or do we know that he's playing?
I mean, he's in uniform. He's fully dressed. He's warming up with all the other receivers, so it would indicate that he will at least give it a go. And then Daniel Parker as well is in uniform and going through warm-ups. He hasn't played since October 24th, so that would be significant.
Interesting on Daniel Parker, because he seemed probably quite a bit more doubtful than than Knox did when we talked to Drinkwitz earlier this week.
Yeah, agreed. Drinkwitz was more hesitant to make any guarantees with him, said they were going to prioritize his long-term well-being over the short-term. So, I think he wasn't, if you remember, Daniel Parker was listed, I think, as like the third stringer on the depth chart for tight end. So maybe we see him kind of eased back into action, or maybe he doesn't end up playing, but he's at least available.
The other update, obviously, Adam Sparks has opted out. Look, I said it seems unlikely that he played 7 games and stuck this out all the way and suddenly feels he's more at risk for COVID. I mean, Sparks had kind of slipped to the 5th cornerback. Seems a little weird before what was going to be your senior day, but hey, who are we to judge, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say with Sparks is he was in quarantine for the past couple of games, so maybe he was sick, maybe he's still sick, I don't know. But, a little strange considering he was going to be honored today.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I knew Sparks hadn't played much. I hadn't realized he was one of those guys in quarantine. So I saw a video on Twitter. I think it was Andrew Kaufman, that Barry Odom greeting some Mizzou people. Have you paid much attention to kind of what the pregame interaction has been at all?
Yeah, I watched. Barry's been on the field. He's been he made the rounds while everyone was out stretching. Saw him talk to probably at least a dozen or so Mizzou players and staffers. Looked like he had a long conversation with David Gibbs. So he's been making the rounds down there. Now both teams are fully out there going through their normal pregame stuff. So I don't see him. If he is out there, he's with the Arkansas people. But he is definitely here. I can confirm that.
Has he fulfilled my pregame wish for this game of planting a huge Arkansas flag like right at midfield and inciting
Not
things?
yet. No, there's still time though.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful.
Right, we've got 25 minutes left, so things can happen. So we've talked a lot about this. What's the word on Felipe Franks there? Because it's making the rounds now, and I checked with our Arkansas people that he really hasn't practiced this week, but is expected to play. Have you guys found out much about that there?
Yeah, no, I mean, just same thing. The Arkansas Rivals people texted me and asked me to keep an eye on him during warmups, and he's out there throwing with all the other Arkansas quarterbacks. I mean, I haven't seen them really attempt to do any more than that. Just kind of throwing routes to receivers, but he's out there, and it looks like he's dressed and everything. So we will see. It's not like he's just watching warmups either, like Kelly Bryant did sometimes last year when he dressed and didn't play. He's throwing, so we'll see.
Yeah, there was an audio issue there for a second. It was completely on my end, guys. I fixed it. My fault, not Mitchell's fault at all. Operator error. So with Franks being banged up, if you're Ryan Walters, does that change what you do at all? I mean, I'm not saying you go into a game trying to hurt a guy, but if you know a quarterback is a little limited, do you maybe bring Nick Bolton or Devin Nicholson or Martez Manuel on some blitzes a little bit more than you might have?
Maybe so, yeah, because one of the things too to keep it in mind with Franks is he's a capable runner, and so maybe you're a little more likely to blitz a linebacker rather than keep him as a spy, or a safety rather than keep him as a spy, and so if he's less likely to take off and run, that potentially frees up someone to go play coverage or to come in on a blitz.
We frequently overcomplicate football. I hate to say it's as simple as the Kentucky game was, which is simply hold on to the ball and you're going to win, because I think Arkansas is a little bit better than that. But
yeah,
that's the way they've won every game they've won. If you hold on to the ball, they haven't beaten anyone yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to. If one team wins the turnover margin significantly, they should win the game. I think also, I think it's going to come down to also just which quarterback can make more plays. Especially if Arkansas is going to have a chance. I think it's going to be because Felipe Franks plays a really good game. Yeah. Missouri's shown it can win with Connor Bazelak not doing a whole ton. I mean, like against Kentucky, he was fine, he was solid, but he didn't light the world on fire. So,
right.
I think turnovers, every game is important, but it's the only way Arkansas has won this year, like you said, is by winning the turnover margin and winning it handily. So that will certainly be a key for Missouri, is to hold on to the ball.
I assume for Missouri, no guys you've specifically seen other than Sparks who aren't there that you expected to see. Not that you've gone through all 61 guys or whatever.
Yeah, I haven't quite checked off everyone, but was told not to expect any surprise inactives today. So I'm not expecting any surprises as far as big time contributors not being here.
Last thing on that, kind of refresh my memory. No Sean Robinson for this game still, right?
Correct. I'm not sure why exactly, but he is not here. So Brady Cook is the backup to Connor Bazelak.
Well, Brady Cook, start the Heisman campaign against Vanderbilt.
He's perfect.
Last week.
He's perfect.
He has a quarterback rating of 1 million or whatever it is. So,
Mm-hmm.
All right. So last thing for you, Mitch, I know they're doing senior day. That sometimes messes with timelines and stuff a little bit, or as far as we know, 11 o'clock kickoff, or do you know?
I think so. I don't know. I haven't been told differently. I'm looking out there now. They have not started the senior day festivities yet, so I don't know if that could push it back a hair, maybe. But if it's starting later than 11, that has not yet been communicated to us.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them too.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird dynamic this year. I mean, who knows? Maybe Barry Odom just hangs out in the tunnel with these seniors as they take the field. Right?
Actually, I was talking about that before the field. Like, it kind of would almost make sense if he was out there too, except that he'd be wearing Arkansas colors. That would be kind of weird.
Right. So, all right, Mitch, I know you got stuff to do. We'll let you go. Thanks, man, and we'll catch up with you later in the day.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Mitchell Forty signing off from Faroe Field. And again, the issues there with the audio for a couple minutes were 100% on my fault. I did literally almost say before we called Mitch, hey, this is the first show we've gotten through without me forgetting to press a button or without some sort of major technical issue. It's not. Look, it's still year one, man. It's getting better. But I'm still making mistakes here and there. So, eventually maybe we'll have a flawless show, but it hasn't happened yet. So, Missouri and Arkansas, about half an hour from kickoff on SEC Network. We don't know exactly when they're going to start. It's usually around 11. Sometimes that 11 a.m. game doesn't kick off till 11:02 or 11:07. Something like that. Senior day festivities can back it up a little bit, but it is a beautiful day here in Columbia. It's supposed to get up to about 55 degrees, bright and sunny outside. Perfect day for football. I think a lot of fans would like to see a much worse day next Saturday when Georgia comes to town and a team that is not experienced in playing in bad weather. Arkansas and Missouri should be experience in playing in bad weather because this game for like the last 5 years has been sideways, icy rain, gray, depressing hideousness the day after Thanksgiving. It is finally decent weather for this game, which is a nice thing. And of course, when so many people are excited about Missouri football and it's 55 degrees outside on December 5th, only 11,000 people can be there. It's 2020, guys. Things like that are happening. So once again, just kind of want to lay out what we're going to do here. I'm going to stick with you for a couple more minutes on this show. I will end this show. I'm going to take a quick break, grab a cup of coffee. We will get set. We will do On the Call with Power Mizzou, presented by Colin Gentry Law Group. I'll be on air at 11 o'clock. The game will start, coming up pretty soon at after 11 o'clock. We will be here with you guys. On the Call is our just virtual watch-along party. That has gotten more and more popular as well throughout the season. Basically, you guys comment, you ask questions, you do whatever you want to do. We just keep putting those comments on the screen. I watch along, give some thoughts on what's happening, and we hang out because we can't hang out at games. So it's kind of like being on the message board except with a live element. It's kind of like being on Twitter except you don't have to go through tweets about 907 other games. It's all Mizzou, Arkansas, maybe a little bit of SEC talk as well. So we'll do that. Then at the end of the game, I will update the stats. I will immediately sign off. I will jump on Eli Drinkwitz's Zoom call. I will record Drinkwitz's press conference. I will grab 2 Tank 7s, and I will be back up here to drink beer and talk with you guys about the game on our post-game show. That usually is about 30 to 40 minutes after the end of the game, closer to 30 usually. So game ends at 2:15. You're looking at, 2:30, 2:45 is our target for a post-game show. Justin is doing the Jaeger bombs. Justin, it is coffee. I don't break out the booze until the post-game show, man. I try to maintain at least some modicum of professionalism. Not a ton, just a little bit. Sir Mufflebun's asking if Sean Robinson is still injured. We don't know if it's injured, if it's COVID related. We don't know exactly. We just know he's missed the last 2 games. I believe Eli Drinkwitz said they anticipate getting him back Sunday. So when you have such a specific date to me, that leads me to believe it's like COVID or contact tracing related. I can't say that for sure, but otherwise he would probably have said sometime next week. He said Sunday specifically. So, Sean Robinson out. Brady Cook, who was 4 for 4 for, I believe it was 62 yards and a touchdown last week against Vanderbilt, is the backup. Micah Wilson, who's a wide receiver, is the third stringer today. Obviously, Missouri hopes not to see either of those guys. Well, they'd probably like to actually see both of them at quarterback because they're winning 52-3, but we'll see how that goes. It's Connor Bazelak's game as long as it is in some doubt and he is healthy. So we've got the SEC scoreboard scrolling across the bottom. I just want to finish out this show with kind of a quick thought on everything else in the SEC. Again, Georgia Vanderbilt postponed. They're not playing this week. Vanderbilt's, the rest of their games seem to be kind of in doubt. Georgia's going to play Missouri next week. Right now, Georgia Vanderbilt on the 19th, if that all lines up, but we'll see. Texas A&M Auburn, to me, that's the most intriguing game in the SEC this week. I think Auburn's got a real shot, folks. That's the kind of game Gus Malzahn wins. It would knock A&M out of the playoff discussion. Florida at Tennessee is the CBS game at 2:30. Hey, they got to put something on. It is what it is. South Carolina, Kentucky. Whew. Not going to put that one on CBS. I'm not sure they should put that one on TV at all. But they are playing. And then Bama LSU, which is normally the game of the year in the SEC. Bama's favored by 29.5, and most people think they're going to cover. But it does give you a game to watch at night. You never know. Weird things happen in football. I think Bama honestly could afford to lose that game and still win out and be in the playoff, but that's what that is. BYU Coastal Carolina play sometime today in a game that was scheduled, I think, on Wednesday or Tuesday, so that'll be interesting. Ole Miss and Mississippi State off this week in the SEC. Ole Miss has paused football activity until at least next Wednesday due to COVID issues. So what we are going to find out next week is, can Ole Miss get back on the practice field on Wednesday, have 2 practices and a walkthrough, and play next Saturday? I don't remember who they're scheduled to play off the top of my head. But that and Vanderbilt are kind of the 2 things that maybe will finally cause us to lose a game from the SEC schedule. We've had games postponed. Nothing's actually been canceled. The SEC, as of right now, is still on pace to get in every single regular season game. I think, 14 teams playing 10 games. I think it's a total of 70 games. I don't know if my math's exactly right there. But as of right now, the SEC is on pace to get in every one of those. We'll see if it happens. We will get answers by next week, because if you can't play next week, you start losing games off the schedule. So, all right, guys, we started a little early and went a little longer than we've gone on the pregame show the last couple weeks. That is thanks to you guys being here and taking part in a couple of interviews that ran longer than usual. So I'm going to sign off right now. I will be back on in 20 minutes with On the Call, our game watch-along. Hope to have all you guys back. Bring some friends. Let people know what we do, and we will talk Tigers and Razorbacks. Once again, thanks to Burger Smokehouse. Probably don't have time to get any before the game starts, but you got time to run out after the game. Pick up some Burger Smokehouse for dinner tonight. Thanks to them for sponsoring the show, and we will talk to you in 20 minutes.